So what has he had to say? So the first thing he's had to say is that the Labour Party should not, under any circumstances, tack to the left. Now, and he said that the Labour Party should retain the kind of what he called the radical centre ground. And that alone, I think, is worth unpicking what that means. Firstly, I mean, the Labour Party for 40 years has tacked to the right, has tacked further to the right since Blair left office, and now is actually, and it has in the last few years, aped reform, has begun to kind of echo the rhetoric of the far right. And the idea that there's any danger or any prospect of the Labour Party shifting to the left, I think, is for the birds. I think it's highly unlikely. Burnham might decide to spend a bit more, but in terms of any kind of social democratic program, redistribution of wealth, democratization of society, all these things we associate with the left, there's no chance of any of those things occurring. Not at all, not one bit. And Burnham has been at pains to refute any idea, any notion of them. He's made a few leftist sound bites, to test the water, but has renounced those. He's renounced proportional representation. He said he's going to stick to Rachel Reeves' fiscal rules, which means continued austerity. And he will continue, as an Atlanticist, he will continue to support Israel. There's no chance of any left agenda happening there whatsoever. This is why, in my view, the Greens, even though the Greens can't win in Wigan, they should field a candidate anyway. Otherwise you're just conceding ground to the political right. Anyway, that's not why I'm here necessarily to talk about now. Tony Blair has said also that Britain must stick closely to America. Blair not a Blair did not support Brexit, and Blair advocated for Remain. But the reason why Blair advocated for Remain primarily is because it meant that Britain's position as the kind of the Atlantic stopover was maintained. Britain's importance to America has declined in one sense post-Brexit and increased in another. Britain is no longer the useful inside man in the European Union, but it is an island that can be economically colonized, and has been. If you simply look at the FTSE, the number of US companies that are listed on the FTSE that own essentially huge chunks of the British economy, then it is clear that that Britain has been gradually, through things like private equity and privatizations, and simply buyouts of major British companies like Cadbury's by Mondelez and Kraft, has been gradually kind of economically occupied over the last decade or so. And with tech, big tech now, things like Palantir, Oracle, and Blair's pet project that he along with Mandelson, has tried to kind of foist on the Labour Party and onto the British public of digital ID cards, which Starmer, in the last King's speech, has promised to roll out. It shows you where Blair is thinking. Blair has said basically Brexit can't be undone. He says Brexit wasn't good, it was regrettable, but we are where we are, is his words. And so he never misses an opportunity, I'll say it that way. He's never misses a trick. And he sees Brexit, actually, the positives for Brexit, for an Atlanticist who, I would suspect, probably thinks Britain hasn't got much left in it, and sees Britain probably as a kind of a useful adjunct to America, a nice vassal state. And imagines it can't really be anything else now post-Brexit. And maybe he's right. Alarmingly, he's putting huge pressure on the Labour Party to avoid any talk of rejoin. He said that Britain is too weak to rejoin. I mean, maybe that's right. Britain is hugely weakened because of Brexit, and now if it crawls back through the door, we'll have to take probably nowhere near as good a deal as it had, and probably it's entirely possible that deal with the rebate and the Schengen opt out and various other things, and the euro opt out would not be on the table. So perhaps we are where we are. But Blair's interests, I suspect, are more aligned to the people he keeps company with. He has no problem with Trump. This kind of notional liberal has no problem with Trump at all. Just as he had no problem with George W. Bush, and there was this odd, unlikely post 9/11 pairing between the two of them, where Blair became very, very comfortable with Bush, very, 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 very friendly with him, and his chief of staff, I think it was Jonathan Powell, I could be wrong, it might be the British ambassador Christopher Meyer, was told to go to Washington and crawl up the White House's ass and stay there was, I think, post 9/11 the instruction. So Blair banked on Britain's influence in the world being given a kind of an unnaturally long lease of life through the United States of America, and post 9/11 he believed that was an opportunity for that to be amplified. Of course, Britain has become largely irrelevant in the 21st century, and again, partly because of the crises manufactured by its political class, the involvement in the post 9/11 wars, the deregulation of the economy that meant that the 2008 financial crisis hit us particularly hard. The Brexit, austerity Brexit, the incompetence and corruption and graft during the pandemic, then the other stuff, where we're at, the relentless support for Israel's crimes in Gaza, that sort of thing. Our political class has weakened us beyond imagining. And Tony Blair, I think, now sees that as an irreversible process. He now sees that as something that is folly to try to kind of undo. But he also sees, I think, wondrous opportunities in serving a elite financial and tech class in America who still have interests in Great Britain. Anyway, your thoughts, let me know. Bye-bye.